Welcome to Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Tonight, I'm your host, Danny Sneed Jr., the encourager. I want to thank Vivian King for being so gracious to allow me the opportunity to sit in for. Kind of like it reminds me when Johnny Carson would take vacation. He would let Jay Leno sit in. So tonight I'm going to be like Jay Leno.
All right.
And so I'm excited about the opportunity. Again, want to shout out to Vivian King for letting me take care of her baby. Tonight, I have 3 guests in the room with me to help carry this conversation. Tonight's topic is going to be around the day the earth still stands. The day that the earth stood still. Election results 2016. And if you're like me and you woke up this morning and you took a deep breath and you realized that what you expected didn't happen, or it did happen, then that's what we want to talk about. But to set it all up, I want to tell you how I felt. And I'm going to use a football analogy. It was October the 9th. Dallas was playing an NFL playoff game. They were trailing 21-20. The only thing we were playing the Seahawks, only thing we had to do is to kick a field goal. And we could advance to the next round in the playoffs. So here we go. Again, I'm setting this up to describe just how I felt this morning. So we're getting ready to go ahead. There's going to be no time on the clock. They bring on my boy Tony Romo. Romo comes on the field. The ball is snapped. It lands. Romo fumbled the ball. And we don't advance to the playoffs. And I'm going to tell you, to this day, I still hold Tony Romo accountable for that blunder. And it stayed with me for a long time. So what I'm saying is, today's results, I believe, are going to stay with me a long time. And that's the only time, I know it's a football analogy, probably some other events in my life was just as affected me just as much. But to me, I thought about Tony Romo fumbling that ball, and how many, not just me. So let me bring it together. It wasn't that I alone was disappointed. It was all the other Cowboy fans that were disappointed also. So it was a shared grief. So this morning, when I walked outside and I grabbed the newspaper, first thing I said, now all the other newspaper, the dog always pee on. Why he ain't pee on this one? You know what I'm saying? But again, I had to put it in perspective about the results, and I wanted to be sick about it. They're talking about this election stress disorder that people are experiencing from the results of the election. I have kept this copy of this magazine on my desk for about the last 2 months. And I don't know why I kept it on my desk. I'm not saying it was empowering, and I'm not saying that it discouraged me, but it was something about Mr. Donald Trump that intrigued me. And what intrigued me about Donald Trump is not who he was, but the people who supported him.
All right.
I could clearly understand Donald Trump. I had no problem with Mr. Trump's beliefs and his views, because the problem was based on where he was from, how he was raised, who his parents was. So I was good with that. But the people, the millions and millions of people who agreed with his ideology and his rhetoric, I could not wrap my mind around it. So I digress on that subject, and I'm going to go back and set the stage. We're not going to stick the whole night talking about the election results, but the first half we will. But first I want to introduce the panel. Start with ladies first. We have with us the esteemed Tarsha Jackson. Tarsha is top organization director for Texas Organizing Project. Well, and here in Harris County, TOP is a grassroots organization that centers around ending mass incarceration, dealing with the local laws and policy that affect most people in urban environments. Am I right?
You're right. You're right. We organize communities around, and not just local, but statewide. I mean, we, did work around the health care, Obama's affordable health care, but criminal justice is what drove this election for our organization and for the community here locally. So.
Well, I thank you for being here because as we go into the conversation, I looked at your webpage. I've actually worked with you with Right to Justice. And what Right to Justice did was something that I've heard about in different conferences. Right to Justice was created to bring grassroots organizations, other stakeholders that have a stake into changing policies. So the idea behind Right to Justice is to bring us all together, to create policies, to pressure Harris County. So it's local policies that we want to try to affect.
Yeah. Sandra Bland was the turning point for our organization. So when Sandra Bland incident happened, of course, as I said, our membership, our campaigns are driven by our membership. Our members wanted to get involved in criminal justice because this is something that affects their everyday life. And so we started, we began to assess local policies because we were in the middle of the mayor's election. We do electoral organizing, and so we had just endorsed the mayor, and our members was actually in the process of getting out the vote for the mayor, and so they were fired up because, they felt that we were gonna win this race. And so after we won Mayor Turner, it was an opportunity to, and our members had learned more about how can we keep people from going into the criminal justice system, and that's pretrial justice reform. We based our policy on bail reform, implementation of cite and release, ending debtors' prison, ICE and police collaboration, bridging that gap between the Latino, Black, and communities. We also focused on youth justice, drug diversion, and
bail reform.
Bail reform. I mean, that's the number one thing: bail reform and implementation of cite and release and debtors' prison. But these policies that's on this Right to Justice platform is the same policies that we presented to the mayor. I serve on Mayor Turner's transition committee along with our partners that's part of the Right to Justice Coalition, and we presented Mayor Turner with policies that he can use during his administration. So how powerful would that be to, we have a progressive mayor, and then we just recently got Senator Ellis. If we can get a district attorney and a sheriff, we can really transform the criminal justice system, and that was our thinking. So we mirrored the mayor's policy platform and created the Right to Justice platform. Of course, TOP is a C3 and a C4. Our members endorsed, started the process of vetting the district attorney and the sheriff. They endorsed, and the rest is history. And so when I woke up this morning, I was excited because of the simple fact we accomplished our goal. We accomplished our goal of getting people out to vote around an agenda, not a candidate, but an agenda to transform our communities. And so I was like fired up. So I'm like, this is just the beginning. So now it's time for the implementation part of implementing these policies, working with our new elected district attorney and our newly elected sheriff, and implement these policies so that we can reduce the number of people that's going into the criminal justice system. And that's how you basically change the criminal justice system, by organizing people on the ground.
Wow. And that is awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Yeah. Also in the studio, we have Mr. Jim Skelton. He's a legal analyst with KFPT 90.1 FM. They have a format called The Prison Show that airs every Friday. When I was as a returning citizen, formerly incarcerated, and spending out there myself personally, spending 15 years in the criminal justice system here in the state of Texas, there were many nights that I stood by the radio and listened to the prison show. And if you don't know what the prison show is, I'm going to let Jim tell you more about it.
What happens is it's a 3-hour show that comes on Friday evening. And the first hour we devote to one thing, giving information about prison reform. I go on periodically and talk about new case law that comes out. And then what we do, we also have different guests that come on and talk about different things at different agencies that can assist prisoners. And in the last 2 hours, we let the loved ones of the people incarcerated call on the telephone. Now, the people in TDC cannot call back, but the loved ones can leave messages with those in TDC. And it's a way to keep the communication going, because my complaint has always been, because I've been a criminal lawyer for a long time, and I also teach a course in criminal law. My complaint all along is our jail systems break up the very unit of civilization, that's the family. Mm-hmm. And we try to do the best we can through prison show to unite the family with those in prison, because when you destroy the family, you destroy people. Yeah. And that's my biggest complaint. Now, granted, some people have done things they may ought to go to prison for, but that should not punish the family. And so what we attempt to do is keep those community ties with the family so they'll have something to come back home to when they get out, and to keep those ties together. And that's what we attempt to do. Also, we get numerous correspondence, and what I do primarily, I answer a lot of the questions the inmates write and try to give them advice as best I can on what to do and what not to do, because they have a lot of questions about things. And so I give them advice and at least try to help them with some of their legal problems, because they don't have a lot of access to information. Plus, I teach a class every week at the courthouse in which I go over all the last week's appellate decisions, so I pretty well keep on top of what's going on in our courts, because I teach a class every week and we go over all those cases in the past week. And so if there's something pertinent to people on prison, we make sure the prison show gets it. So our job is primarily one thing: information to inmates about what their rights are, and number two, trying to keep that bond between the family and the inmates together by giving the family a chance to contact their loved ones. That's our primary goal.
So information is what you focus on to get into the families and to the guys that are locked up?
Absolutely. Our first hour is based primarily on getting information to people in prison. And so we get a lot of letters telling what their complaints are and what their concerns are. And so what happened, and I'll answer a lot of the letters on the air. I don't want to give their names, but some problem comes up and I'll answer the question on the air for them on what to do. And so it's information is the first hour, and the second hour is keeping that bond between family and inmate together. That's the emphasis of the second 2 hours.
So let me set it up from a real life experience, how the show impacted me when I was on the inside. Now, not everyone gets correspondence from the outside. You don't get letters, but you hope for them. But they had this prison newsletter that came out once a month called The Echo.
I'm real familiar with The Echo.
So The Echo gave you just a snapshot of some of the things that were going on in TDC. And it was, I think, prisoners actually, inmates actually had a lot of impact and influence on what went in. And of course, TDC reviewed it before it went out, am I right?
And on The Echo, yeah. See, our show is uncensored. We don't really care if TDC likes it or not, frankly, because if they have a question, there's a good example. Ray was instrumental in busting a warden up.
And who is Ray?
Ray Hill. Ray Hill was the guy that started this.
Shout out to Mr. Ray Hill for all the work you do.
And what Ray did, he ended up having a warden fired. He's running a cigarette concession out of his garage when there was no smoking in the prison. So we don't really worry about being censored by TDC. As a matter of fact, they've tried to keep our show out of the prison. And in our response to that, we put a repeater station, a repeater transmitter up in Huntsville, and we got in court orders to make sure the prison show people in prison get to hear our show.
Wow. So let me tell you, set this up from, like I say, inside experience. What really makes this show work is you listen and you write your family, you tell them about the show, and you tell them, give me a shout out on the radio. So when that person comes in and says, I want to give a shout out to Danny Sneed over there on Beat 01, tell him his family love him, and we can't wait till you come home. And when you land in that cell, you hear your name come over those airways, and then you go down the hallways, and people say, "Man, Danny, I heard your name on the show last night," and you got this big smile on your face. You got this sense of pride. But what it did is it's validation. I am somebody. you know, and people know that people love you and care about you because they went through all that process just to, and your name. And you got to realize, like, once you incarcerated, what it does is your identity is kind of not gone, but it's kind of put on ice. It's kind of put on pause. Now you're not a name, you're a number in the system. My number was 644903. Now, why do I remember that? And I've been out of the system for so long. Well, because just like I know my first name is Danny, because people identify me with that now that I'm out. When I was on the inside, most of the things I dealt with a number and not my name. And so that became more of my identity, because to do anything, they always say, what is your TDC number?
Yeah.
And when you fill out anything, your TDC number, if it wasn't on it, you couldn't get the resources that you needed.
Because see, that dehumanizes people, and that's the way they control you, is by dehumanizing you. And what we try to do is make them feel good about themselves. Number two, keep in contact with your family.
Well, I just want the prison show, KFPT 90.1 FM, so you guys know that that's available. You may never heard of the prison show, and it's been around for how long, Jim?
My goodness, it's been around probably 15 or 20 years, a long time. Ray started it years ago, and then after Ray retired, he started a program called Execution Watch, in which we go on the air during executions and discuss while they're being executed. And I'm the legal analyst for it, and what I did, I encouraged Ray to go up and do a television interview with the person who's going to be executed, because I thought that we should play that on the air while they're being executed so people know that's a real living human being.
Dehumanizing.
Absolutely, because they're going to kill somebody, they'll at least hear his voice.
Wow.
And so we did that. And so Ray quit the prison show, then he went to do the Execution Watch, and I do all the legal analysts for it, because I have a team of lawyers, like 3 lawyers that help me with that. And we go over all the problems involved. And we also video it. And we'll also video our interviews with them and play it here on this television channel.
You don't interview the actual last breath, do you?
No, we video. What we do is we go up ahead of time and video the inmate that's going to be executed.
Oh, okay.
And then we play that video, the audio video, we play on the radio show. And the regular video we'll oftentimes play on this channel here.
Oh, wow.
Because I think they should know, if you're going to kill somebody, the least you can do is know their name and hear their voices.
Well, again, thank you guys for the service that you offer to persons like me. Now I'm a returning citizen, formerly incarcerated. But again, that was a great platform for me when I was on the inside. Also on the panel, we have Greg Fulton, retired U.S. Army, native of Memphis, Tennessee. He's a community activist. He's the head of an organization called I Am My Brother's Keeper. And I was just on a conference call with you last Saturday. Right. I will let you tell more about it, but I appreciate having the opportunity to participate. But go ahead, Greg, tell us some more about.
Well, what we talked about was, like I said, we are a men's mentoring program, and we focus on not just the men from a standpoint of being, we identify who you are, because everybody got a mentor. But what we find out that men from 18 and above don't really have mentorship. And so our concept is iron sharpen iron. So as you know, this month we focus on men's health. So we focus on health and wellness, financial management, relationship issues. And I think it's important for us, and I think how this tie into the prison system, we have to have preventive measures. You got intervention, which is important, but I think preventive measures is just as important. So if we can create preventive measures, and I think the male species must have other males that they can sharpen the iron from iron to iron. So this is kind of our concept. We've been established for about 4 years. Our headquarters is in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, and I'm actually the president in the Houston chapter. We got a chapter in New York and also in Washington, D.C. So we focus on men from 18 and above. And I think it was important for us to establish a mentoring program for men.
All right. Again, thank you, Greg, for being here. The unique thing about this panel, I've worked with Tasha, with TOP, with a grassroots organization called Texas Advocate for Justice, and they got skin in the game, and they're trying to end mass incarceration, which we like to describe as the beast. And the reason we call it the beast is because it really can't be destroyed. And mass incarceration, you can't end it. But what we like and what we see in grassroots organizations is try to make people aware of its existence and how it operates. So in a conference, the analogy they gave is if mass incarceration, what they identified as a beast, is the enemy, and we all agree that it can't be destroyed, you can never eliminate it, people being incarcerated. But what could you do if you had an enemy you couldn't destroy? And the thought was you cut off his food supply. So what does the mass incarceration feed off of? What does the beast feed off of? People.
Right.
So if you stop feeding people, then he couldn't survive. Prisons are not built for punishment, they're built for profit.
Right.
So if you take away the profit margin,
Right.
then you start seeing the reduction in the building of prisons. But so we want to pivot back to the election. I wanted everybody to talk about what each organization that you guys were a part of, but I want to go back and we'll go back in reverse this time, and we want to hear your thoughts around. I gave you my analogy how I felt when I woke up this morning. I equated to I said it reminded me of Tony Romo fumbling the ball.
Well, if I could say that it was surprising, but in the back of my mind, it was okay. And the reason I say that because this world system has always been through ups and downs. And if you take an analogy of something that's being destroyed, in order for you to rebuild it, sometimes you have to tear it all the way down. And so I looked at the loss as a gain.
Okay.
Because we have to understand as a people, from a Democrat or from whatever background you come from, that sometimes you have to tear you all the way down, and then sometimes you have to go through a rebuilding process. So my thoughts was this: well, yeah, we was kind of disappointed about the loss, but in the back of my mind, I had some doubts that she was not going to win. And the reason I say that because we are so used to having it our way, and we are never used to having it somebody else's way. And so now we really have to come together from the local level and ask ourselves, how bad do you want it? If I could talk about this little story I used to always tell about a dog. Individual went to a kennel and he wanted to buy a dog. And when he got in there, he kept on hearing the dog hollering, roof, 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 and barking, and nobody was paying attention to the dog. So the man that came in the kennel with the guy that was buying the dog, he said, why is the dog barking? He said, he's barking if nobody's paying attention to him. And he said, well, the dog is sitting on the nail. And he looked at him, and everybody looked at him. He said, why the dog don't get off the nail? And he said, well, old Blue, it ain't hurt them bad enough. So the moral of the story is, if it hurt us bad enough, we'll get up off the nail. So I think with the election and with everything that happened, we got to get off the nail. We have to get off the nail now because we're going to be held accountable for who we are and what we got to do. So, I love that little story about the dog. When it started hurting you bad enough. So now, with Trump, as being the president, we got to get off the nail.
I heard a great analogy today, and because I'm always looking for the positive,
Right.
because it does no good to complain, about anything.
Especially
Right.
if you didn't vote.
Right. And one of the first things that came to my mind this morning was one word: acceptance is the key to us understanding the situation. So it says, as soon as you accept it, you'll move away from this thing they call election, stress disorder, where I didn't want to go outside. I wanted to get up out of the bed this morning. If I could have found a real good enough excuse to say I just want to stay here and say that this is bad. But when I looked at it, and we talked about this earlier, Tarsha, I learned through this being involved in politics is this: the President of the United States has little effect on my life in Harris County, Houston, Texas.
Right.
Who has a lot of impact and influence on my life is the judge, the county commissioner, my state representative. Why? Because I have access. Mel Turner is accessible. Dwight Barkins in District D, I have him on speed dial. Imagine that. As much as I've been through in my life, I have a councilman on speed dial. I have the head of top at the table that's very involved. When Kim Orrick defeated Devin Anderson and became the new district attorney, I understood before this election, because I met Kim, and she was out in the community at a grassroots organization events at a church. It wasn't about 30 or 40 people there, and Kim was right in there, and I didn't know who she was. She didn't put on any airs. She was just there to be a part of the conversation.
Right.
But at the end of it, she did say that this is how I want to make a difference in attacking mass incarceration and the criminalization of the urban neighborhoods and the disparities between how society is picking winners and losers. She say, if I'm elected as the DA, I'm going to address issues differently than they've been done now. And so I didn't pay much attention then, but as time went on and Vivian endorsed her, you endorsed her, and other people started endorsing her, I started paying attention. And I went to your Facebook page after you accepted me as a friend today, and I looked at you with Kim taking selfies and right there celebrating her victory. How did that feel?
It felt good. It felt really good. For me, it was, because we started, in January? It was a whole year of
Campaigning?
Not campaigning. The campaigning was, you could say campaigning, educating community about the policies, who can control, individuals going to jail on low-level offenses. So the whole year of just being in the community and galvanizing the community around this policy agenda, this policy platform that we created. But most of all, of course, we have a PAC, and we did the Get Out the Vote, and we targeted 350,000 people here in Harris County for this election. And out of those 350,000 people, 164,000 of those people voted early.
Wow.
Early voting
we won it through early,
effective.
exactly. But the most important thing was people, like the Harris County Jail, 50% of the people in there are black. So that means black people got out and voted. They were galvanized about this policy by criminal justice. So they got out and voted for Kim Ogg. They got out and voted for Ed Gonzalez because they wanted change. And so the excitement is that people got, and then of course part of our numbers, 56,000 of them had never voted before. So we're constantly increasing, the electorate. Yes, exactly.
Wow.
And so that's what I'm excited about.
We got a phone call. Let's see who's calling in.
Calling?
Truth and Justice with Danny Sneed.
Yes, hello?
Yes.
Okay, okay. I wanted to weigh on in the, about the, you were mentioning about the election and it doesn't have really much of a effect. And you're absolutely right. I think the election is I think it's like a soundboard for a lot of people. And it's very, very strange that people would actually take more time, go out there and vote or put more impetus on the election, either the national election, presidential, versus, let's say, governor or city council. But it's interesting because in this election, it kind of monitors what happened in Harris County. And I think even though we have elected our, and it's first black president, and it's, that term's over, that doesn't mean that black and white issues or race issues are gone, but I think it's also transformed into sort of a what do you call it, class issues. And what happened with the national election, I think, is also taking place here is because people are getting frustrated about the fact that they're not being heard. Most of the minorities who are being jailed or who are not doing well are minorities, and they're telling the politicians, say, listen, we live here, we have rights, and we want to be heard. And those who don't, they said they're being pushed out. And finally, it's a voice. But I think, and also politicians are taking a heed to this because there are more initiatives to help people out who are incarcerated, who are having felonies. Because if you can't help those people to get ahead, then you're not going to make much of a difference. And I'm gonna listen, hang up and listen.
Well, before you hang up, let me ask you something. You live here in Houston?
Yes, I have. I've been living here for the past 40. Well, I'm 41, so I've been living here past 38, 35 years.
Have you considered getting involved in any of these grassroots organizations that are trying to change things here locally?
I have, but I just don't. I don't know too much about it. I mean, last I heard was the mayor's initiative of turn around, or was it career? As for careers, but nothing else. I haven't really heard too much about that.
Well, what I want to do is encourage you to be involved in your local organizations. And, we spend a lot of time, we watch CNN, we watch Fox, and we have a concern, we have a voice, but to really be an impact, once you join one of these grassroots organizations and you with people that have the same passion and the same ideals, you begin to see that you find more of an impact of being involved with boots on the ground than and you get a chance to learn, and then you take that education back to your family and your friends, your co-workers. So what I like about these organizations is the education and informative function of it. So the Google Top, Google Texas Advocate for Justice. There's what's some other?
You have BLMTX, Organizing Collective. You have Truth to Power, United We Dream. There's a lot of organizations out here. But you can reach out to Top, and Top can make sure we connect you to organizations that fit, what you want to work on.
Yeah, and what's your name, sir?
Ben, and that's TOP, right?
Yeah,
Right.
It's Texas Organizing Project. And so, and I'm sorry, you about to talk?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to tell Ben that the first step is having a willing mindset to want to do something. And I want to commend you even for having because it starts with a thought process. And then you take that process and you turn it into actions. And so I want to say that you have begun your journey of advocating by thinking and placing a desire or need in your heart to make a difference. So I want to commend you for that. And I want to tell you, just keep up the good work and let it be one day at a time.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. I mean, and I appreciate that.
Thank you for calling in. Continue to listen to the show.
Yeah. No, I wanted to add, like yourself, Daniel, when I started organizing 15 years ago, it was as a result of my son, who was 10 years old, getting arrested at school for classroom disruption. And that classroom disruption, a Class C misdemeanor, he spent a total of 5 years in the Texas Youth Commission. So, but there was no organizations out in the communities to educate families how to navigate these juvenile justice systems. So I'm here doing this 15 years later to make sure families don't go through what I went through, and make sure families, have the information they need to advocate for themselves. Yeah,
So Jim, I want to ask you a question. How do you feel that a president candidate can win the popular vote and not be elected,
Well, it's happened twice before with Bush and Gore, and look what happened with Bush.
but lose the electoral
Gore
vote?
won the popular vote, and Bush won the electoral college. You know what a disaster that was. And I think this probably will be just the same.
Do you think it should be changed and that
Here's the
every man
problem.
vote should be counted?
Here's the problem. The electoral colleges are in the Constitution. You got to get a constitutional amendment to change it, and the smaller states will never agree. To get a constitutional amendment done, number one, Congress has to pass it, and 3/4 of the states have got to ratify it. And it's not going to happen realistically. It's nice to talk about, but it's not going to happen.
Wow. Can I hope?
Well, you can hope, and so did Hillary hope. It's not even. And I want to go back to one thing. Let me give you some history on some of the judges here, because whatever we found exciting on the local level is that a lot of the judges were defeated. Let me explain how this works. When I worked in the DA's office years ago under Carol Vance, and Carol was really a great, great DA because he gave us unfettered discretion. He said, if you don't feel a case is good, then don't try it. And he didn't do anything to put pressure on us to get convictions.
They created a unit named after him, the
Pardon
Carol
me?
Vance unit?
Carol, no, yeah, it's named after him, after Carol.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, when Johnny Holmes took over, I've known Johnny, I worked with him. Johnny wanted to be a cop. And what happened at that point, the DA's office went from representing the public to representing the police department. Because they're really the law firm for Houston Police Department. Because they cover it up, they cover a lot of stuff that HPD does, and most of our prosecutors, unfortunately, are more interested in protecting the police than they are the public. Now, what happens as a result of that, a substantial number of judges who get appointed and get elected are former DAs. In fact, at one time, there were 30-something criminal judges, all but one had been assistant DAs. And what the route is, go to law school, get out of law school, worked as a prosecutor, the next day you're a judge. And that's not right. And so what was exciting to all of us is that virtually every assistant DA who went from the DA's office to the bench got defeated this time. Wow. And we ought to have a balance, and this is what really bothers me, is that we ought to have a balance between those who do defense work, because we've got people judging folks who have never talked to somebody accused of a crime, have never visited with a parent or loved one, ever. And they usually are spoiled brats, and that's one
Privilege.
Well, it's that thing of privilege, because they don't understand the empathy you feel for people. Because most people, I've been around a lot of criminal law stuff. I worked my way through school working in psychiatric wards. And I've been around all sorts of people who've done horrible things. And I can honestly say of all those people I've represented and known, there are only a couple of them that were bad people, and they're the exception rather than the rule. Most people get in trouble for a couple of things. Number one, they're immature. Number two, they're not very bright, and they have no impulse control. And that comes with maturity. And the truth of the matter is, what keeps people out of prison is a general rule is maturity. If you can keep a man alive till he's about 35, he's going to be all right, unless there's something really bad about his genetic makeup. And putting him in prison doesn't do anything but hold them long enough till they mature. Right. And you don't have people sitting on the bench judging people, putting them in jail who have any empathy whatsoever. Look at Brian Patrick, who was defeated this time. His father is Patrick, the lieutenant governor. You think he's going to give you a break? Are you nuts? He's not going to do it. He's never confronted a family, never confronted like this lady here that went through the anxiety with her child. They've never confronted that. Whereas with a defense lawyer, you've gone through that before, and there should be a balance on the judiciary. And like I say, this time, only one Republican judge kept her office, and it was a civil judge. Every criminal district judge that was up for election this time got defeated, and all of them were assistant DAs.
So let me paint this picture. When before a doctor becomes a doctor, what does he have to do first?
Intern.
Intern.
Right.
So they make you get dirty before you get a nice office and just start making all this high-end money. And you, in the intern, they really put them through the ring. So if in the lawyer field, instead of them saying before you become a judge, you have to be a defense attorney.
No, you have to pay a politician off.
Well, I was saying it would be in an ideal world, and you top of your world, it would be great at that professional
Let me explain
level.
what you can do. I tried to get this done when I was in, Judge Love was alive. We have 3 law schools here in town, and I wanted them to start a legal defense clinic after you get out of law school, because most lawyers can't make a living their first year out. Give everybody a 2-year term working, defending people, working with law school, and teaching at the same time. Call that an internship. And then at the end of that internship, they get a master's degree in law. And that way it's silly because they have hospitals tied into internship. Our law schools are across town and they never see people in the criminal justice system.
So my idea is not far-fetched. Somebody's really thought about this.
I've already thought about it. So what I wanted to do is go to U of H, go to the 2 different law schools here in town, and say, you guys set up a training program for lawyers once they get out and get their law license. We'll put them through a 10-year internship. And by paying their salary, they don't have the pressure of trying to make a living, and they can be tutored and monitored by the faculty at law school and know how to prepare cases. And then at the end of the 2 years, give them a master's degree, and that gives them some experience and some job skills. And what we could do, the way you could fund that program is real simple. You could fund the program by letting people have personal bonds and charge them for example, you have your bond is $10,000. You put 3% of that in the registry of the court. When you show up and your case is over, you get everything back but 3%. Take that 3% and put it in that fund to fund that fund for law school. And you can fund it that way because, and I know people don't like to hear this, but bondsmen do nothing to contribute to our society other than having bad paintings in their office and make a lot of money. And there's no reason for that because a lot of people are in jail simply because they can't make a bond. They set these bonds horribly high. If they would simply let people make a personal bond like they do in federal court, because you make a personal bond in federal court, you get your money back when the case is over. Now, what you could do in this case is get all your money back but say 3%, and that goes to fund this program I was talking about. And that way you train lawyers, give them a chance to get some skills like an intern at a hospital, have the law school involved with the courthouse. I know I taught at South Texas, and I don't like academic people real well, so I quit. I had no use for most academic people. And what I did, I was teaching a class in criminal procedure, and I did not call on anybody in class. I said, I don't care if you come or not. I wouldn't call roll. I said, what we're going to do, I made everybody in my class spend a weekend getting people out of jail at pretrial services. I said, when you get your law degree, the minimum you should know is how to get somebody out of jail. And I would take them to the courthouse to hear things. That's where you learn procedure. You don't learn it from a book. You learn it by seeing it and seeing it done. And that's what I did. I took them out to watch autopsies. I did all sorts of things to teach them how to do this sort of stuff by hands-on work. And that's how law schools should be working, rather than having that pie in the sky and worrying about bell curves.
Wow, that's very interesting. One of the things, I went to a conference, the Reimagining Incarceration and Reentry Project Curate conference, and it was sponsored by, make sure I get his name right, Mr. Massey. And what I learned in Al Massey, he put this on, but what I learned is this professor named Shad Morano put up this scale, and he showed prisons has this ideology that if you keep a person locked up to a certain age, he tends to not to reoffend. So when the sentencing guidelines, across the board nationally, all have the same model of belief that if you keep a person locked up long enough, that would change. His behavior would change through time versus having a reform program, or actually doing something to reform it. Just leave him in this controlled state for an average of almost till he's 30, then that will reduce the chances of him repeating the behavior.
Did you hear about the Elmira project they experimented with?
Was it in the past or was it recent?
In the past. It's been quite a bit in the past.
Okay.
What they did, it's silly. If you're from Houston, it's silly to end up in some place in Timbuktu and have to come back to Houston. All you learn how to do is chop cotton and hoe wheat. That's it. Now, what are you going to do when you get out? Nothing. Wow. So what they did, they put people in a group, and rather than putting them in prison, in the community. And here's what they did. They wanted them to bond within the group, because a lot of people bond with people who get them in trouble. So what the leader of the group was, they were very vague. We sat around in the group and they said, how long is this going to last? He says, I don't know. But what do you mean you don't know? I don't know how long it's going to last. Up to you. And he was real vague, and the reason he did that, once that's done, they start talking to each other. What do you think this dodo means? What do you think he means? And that bonds them together in that group. Slowly he lets them know one thing. They get out of the group, and they can also earn some money to take care of their family, which is really, really important. And what he wanted to do is build bonding within that group. And then what he finally told the group, you can get out of here when the group says you can get out, when they can vote you out. When your peers think you deserve to walk the streets without getting in trouble, you can get out. That's how you get out.
What state was this in?
It was, they did this in Elmira, New York years ago. And it worked out beautifully, but then we had a bunch of Republicans came in that had that theory people ought to be locked up and you shouldn't have them in the community. And you had all these dodos running around screaming, my God, we got criminals next door to us, and all that silly stuff. And it was a marvelous program because, number one, they had them bond within the group, and that's where the bonding took place, let them take care of their families and earn some money. And they worked them during the day and gave them, they got paid for it, and they met at night. And they were not released from the program until the group, not as some parole board, to the group says, we think you're okay.
So were they allowed to still continue to live with their families?
They had to stay there at night, no.
So they were basically still incarcerated.
They were still they were locked up. They worked during the day,
right,
and then they went to that program at night.
Right.
So let me make a quick pivot again, and I'm gonna pivot back to this. And on the headline of this magazine, it asked the question, can they make America great again? And so I've been listening to the pundits all day, and I think I'm about to stop listening to them because they were absolutely wrong on this election.
Right.
And man, everybody is trying to justify, rationalize why they were wrong and how these secret voters came out. Now they're saying the rural community, people that couldn't read and write, went to the polls, basically, the low information voter. But out of all the different analyses, one of the ones that I heard that really kind of made me have some hope. They're saying what's wrong with our government is it's always been imbalanced, meaning that it never was going to get anything done long as it was imbalanced. Long as you had the House run by Republicans and the Senate run by Democrats, and it didn't matter who the president was, you never was going to get people all on the same agenda. But so that their thinking is this: now that the House is Republican, the Senate Republican, and the president Republican, why don't we hope that they're going to agree?
Yeah.
So maybe some things can be accomplished.
Right.
And so will that be a bad thing?
No, that's why I said.
No.
Now we got to trying to get accomplished.
But the thing about it is, the hope is this: that at least if they agree, they'll be more agreeable together.
Exactly.
The hope is, as a veteran,
Right.
that some of the policies won't hurt us. Hopefully they won't beat the war drums and send more of us young people off to war. Hopefully, when Donald Trump's saying, what the hell do you have to lose voting for me? The dog whistle he blew to the urban communities is, he said, look how you living. You know, I'm going to make it better if you elect me. They haven't ever done it. So whether it was just rhetoric, or him just, you know, just being flippant, but again, and that's just something to look at.
Yeah, and then I'm thinking about even locally, you know, I mean, we've never had, I mean, since I can remember, we never had a Democratic district attorney we had Ed Gonzalez as far as sheriff, but not Ed Gonzalez, Agent Garcia. But I mean, this is an opportunity for the city of Houston. We got Mayor Turner, we have, you know, Democrats in the county, Kim and Ed Gonzalez. So let's see how are we as a collective is going to reform our criminal justice system. So just like Washington, D.C., you have all the Republicans. Let's see how things work here locally.
One
of
the thoughts that I always keep in mind is prevention. How can we all create a preventive measures? How can we keep young men and young women from going into prison? So I think intervention is phenomenal, but I want to focus on prevention.
Yeah, and see, like across and I haven't looked at any numbers, but you know, across the country, but I know that, you know, the Democrats has done good in the local, you know, municipalities. So this is an opportunity to motivate the community, you know, like really give the community something that they can like touch, a tangible win. And when the next election come around, voters are gonna flock to the polls because they're gonna at some point begin to trust in our candidates will eventually come back.
One of the things I've heard about change, they say the most influential ingredient to change is having a conversation around why it's important to change things. Yeah. So I want to thank you guys for being here and having that conversation.
Absolutely.
And you got to put a hopeful spin on things because if you're dealing with people like you are, and you have, I am my brother's keeper. You were top with the prison show. I'm with the Path of Freedom. I'm with Texas Advocate of Justice. I'm with Vivian King as a legal assistant. I'm on this platform with Truth and Justice. All these areas, I'm also working with U.S. vets as a peer support specialist, dealing with homeless veterans in transition and their families. So all these platforms are dealing with people that lack one thing, and that's hope. And so when you can give a person hope, you can change. They can take their hope and change their situation. Right. So I want to pick up again. I went to the University of Houston on Monday and watched a film called 13. 13 is a movie, a documentary that's supposed to be almost the answer to the birth of a nation. I hadn't seen the birth of a nation, but they showed a little bit of the birth of the nation doing this, and the birth of the nation was supposed to be a documentary propaganda to incite fear of a colored man. Yeah. Wow. And so what it did, it had the image, it had a white guy in white and blackface playing a role. In one of the scenes, he is supposed to be attacking a white woman, supposed to be raping him. And they describe him, he's an animal, he's a beast. And so what she did in the movie to prevent from getting raped is she jumped off the cliff rather than to be raped by him. And so they saying these images help shape how the perception was of people of color. That's what the movie did. And also in the movie, the Klan was portrayed as a positive group of people. So I want to not commercialize and or advocate in a monetary reason, but for educational tool, 13 can be seen on Netflix. So if you got Netflix, you can go see it at Netflix. My organization, the Path of Freedom, we're going to try to create a day to do this. I'm prepared from that. Also, have a good friend named Randy Harden. him and his wife put together a documentary film about his life. Randy went to prison 5 times, and his wife was going to school. She's still in school for cinematography, and one of her assignments was to create a short film script. And so what she did is she created the script, and it took off, and now there's a story about his life, and it's going to be Friday, December the 16th at the Mac Theater, and I'm also was in this movie.
Oh.
I had a small role in the movie. So we got a minute to go, and it's been exciting. I want to send a shout out to Vivian King.
Vivian.
You know, she may or not be may or may not be watching, but I know she's out there critiquing. I want to thank my guest, Tarsha Jackson from Top. I want to thank my guest, Jim Skeleton from the prison, like Red Skeleton from the prison show, and my good friend and a colleague, Greg Fulton, retired veteran, community activist, Memphis, Tennessee. I am my brother's keeper. Guys, go ahead around. You got 2 for a few seconds. We got 1 minute left before we off air.
But Top, I just wanted to thank you for what you're doing. Thank Dan and thank everybody. And again, coming into Houston is exciting because you get an opportunity to see different cities and different opinion of people. So I'm excited about being here and just looking forward to being a part of the community and making a difference.
Okay, Jim, you have 10 seconds.
I'll pass and let her.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm just, thank you for having me here. I'm excited about the future. I'm ready to get to work and to continue, you know, pressing for criminal justice reform here in Harris County.
Okay. And I'm going to give you my last analogy on President-elect Trump. And I heard this one right there. They say, well, you know what? When you get ready to start something new, sometimes you have to start with something bad. In the garden industry, they start off with what?
Manure.
Manure. So we're not going to say anything bad about Trump because some of the worst things in life produce some of the best things. And that's my hope for whatever perception it is in him. I believe that something good can come out. I have to hope for that for not only for me, but for the future of this country, the greatest nation on God's green planet. Thank you for tuning in to Truth and Justice with Danny Sneed.